Bears fans, it's about to get absolutely crazy. If these rumors are true, there is a possibility of Montez Sweat's favorite player in the NFL coming to play alongside Montez Sweat. This is an incredible development. We're going to talk about that. If you like this type of content, make sure you hit the like button on your way in and let's kick it off. And we're going to start with, so this came out about 2 weeks ago, and this is where it gets interesting. Montez Sweat is telling everybody who will listen 2 weeks ago that when he's learning about rushing, when he's learning about his job at the defensive end, there are four defensive stars that he likes to focus on: Khalil Mack, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, and Nick Bosa. Each and every one of those guys represents something that Montez Sweat wants to pursue, and that's the elite perfection of a defensive end. So that leads us to another article that just came up not long ago. About a week ago, we get this. Ryan Poles is now eyeing two different stars ahead of the trade deadline who might be available. Now, one of them was Max Crosby of the Las Vegas Raiders. Turns out he's not available. So this was a short period of time where with a, what do you call it, a will they, won't they sort of scenario playing out. But there's no interest in the Raiders on getting rid of Max Crosby. Now, Crosby has expressed his frustration saying, and I quote, "I just want to be on a competitive team." Now, the Raiders want that to be the Raiders. So we'll see how they go, but we don't care about that. We're Bears fans. So hopefully they get it together, but if they don't, oh well. The other person that he's looking at, Myles Garrett. Well, guess what? Turns out Myles Garrett might just be available. So let's take it another step forward. And there are rumors abound everywhere. The Colts, the Browns, the Falcons. There's all kinds. The Bengals are in this. The 49ers are in this. Everybody right now is looking at Myles Garrett as a potential replacement for their defensive line. Now, that leads us to right now. And guess what? Bears are talking to the Browns at this point. Ryan Poles has reached out an inquiry about whether or not Myles Garrett would be available and what would it take to get Myles Garrett. So now we have this opportunity coming up. Do you want Myles Garrett on the Chicago Bears? Could you imagine a defensive tandem of Montez Sweat and Myles Garrett on the edges, subbing in Darrell Taylor as needed, moving DeMarcus Walker on into the inside on some plays, Andrew Billings getting a little bit of relief, and Gervon Dexter doing what Gervon has been doing? Could you just imagine how much better this team could potentially get with one of those manic sort of edge rushers, the likes of which we've rarely seen other than Montez Sweat for a long time? Could you imagine what that pairing would look like in the NFL? If you think the Bears are not an elite defense now, it would be over at that point. But let's talk about financially. How do we get there? Well, important part, and I want to point out that there are a couple of different things, and I'm not sure that this even resonates, but there are moves that need to be made for the Chicago Bears. Number one, there's about $6.2 million in cap space and about $15 million in dead cap money. So we can't get around that. We got $6 million available. Can we bring in Myles Garrett at that point? Well, Myles Garrett's contract and cap hit is $20 million. So we're going to have to be able to fit that in there somewhere. So like to me is, in order to make and facilitate this trade, we're going to need a couple different things. We're going to need this $6.3 million. We're going to need this $11.3 million for Nate Davis, which is going to have to be part of this deal at this point. And then what else do we have? Well, the interesting thing is the one guy that we know we probably are going to move on for sure is going to be Khalil Herbert right here. Now, this presents something of a problem because none of this adds up to enough funds and enough cap space. So some releases are going to happen in the meantime. So that means we're going to have to come back up here and we're going to have to look at spots, and we're going to have to maybe make some deep cuts, if you will, to try to figure out what to do. And look, I want to say this. Amin Agbenamigma being added into that for the outside linebacker, perhaps defensive end, might be on the table at that point. Mercedes Lewis, I don't think so. He's a team captain, but we need a couple million more dollars. And look, Velus Jones could be available right there, but doesn't quite get us there. It needs to be over 2 million in order to make that happen. So you got to be asking yourself, like, what creative way can we do that? Or who do we have to get rid of off of the roster in order to make that happen? And look, there's not a whole lot of options in that context. Dominique Robinson is only $1 million, so you're going to have to free up some real space here. Maybe Kari Blasingame. I mean, I think at this point we're one of only two teams with a fullback on the roster. So those are the options right now. This is what it looks like. It's going to take some maneuvering to get Myles Garrett, but if anybody will make it happen, then Ryan Poles would make it happen. But it would require an interesting change in some of the dynamic on this team. And look, this is what we wanted. This is what we've been looking for. This is why you bring in a rookie like Caleb Williams to run the team for 4 or 5 years, to see what you've got and to try to build around him. And that's exactly what's happening. So I think this is a moment where we should get excited about the possibility of Myles Garrett coming to Chicago. And we might see this pop up just out of nowhere over the next 24 to 48 hours as we get closer to the trade deadline. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember to bear down. And remember, we don't like Green Bay. We don't like Detroit. We don't like Minnesota. In fact, they're gross. They're gross. Anyway, we'll talk to you again very, very soon.